You're watching Business Agenda. China's property dragons are just waking up, according to some experts, with rich Chinese individuals and companies searching the globe for investment opportunities. Surveys suggest Chinese investors will spend up to $50 billion across international markets this year alone, with Australia as an investment destination near the top of the list. Ray White Group Real Estate has been operating in Australia since first opening its doors in Queensland in 1902. It's remained a family-owned business whilst growing into also a real estate franchise giant with offices across Australia, NZ, Indonesia, Abu Dhabi, India, and recently opened its first operation in Seoul and in Hong Kong. By mid this year, it will have a new Beijing operation. Joint Chairman Brian White joins me now from our CBD studio. Brian White, thanks very much for joining us.
Good evening. Now,
if we could talk about what is the state of the Chinese foreign investing market, or the potential of that, what are the prospects for it?
Last week I spoke at a conference in Beijing that had been sponsored and led by the Chinese government, and it was all about outward investment from China. I was staggered at the delegations from around the world that are all at this conference seeking Chinese support to invest in their different projects in virtually every corner of the globe.
Really? So what, Africa as well as Germany and Central America or South America, were they all there?
There were 2 busloads of African delegates, and the spread of different projects that they had to introduce to Chinese investors covered everything. South America, Central America, Canada, and so forth. It was a remarkable experience talking and presenting our side of the story to quite a packed auditorium.
Oh, well, that's great. Yeah, but as I understand it, it's not just, we hear and we read about in the real estate sections of newspapers here the prime residential property in Sydney, Brisbane or Melbourne, or the mining ventures or prime agricultural land, on the other hand, going to Chinese investors. But you went there to try and interest them in a lot more in between those 2 extremes, didn't you?
Yes, my family, I guess we need to think long term. I hope that's how we've always approached things. And China is such a big part of our lives, and clearly will continue to be for a long time. So we took the decision to open our own family office in Beijing, to form relationships, to get to know, to understand more what's happening, and to be of value not just to our Australian vendors, but with an increasing number of Chinese owners within Australia. We want to have the credibility that we're in their capital and available to be of assistance, and to present different assets from time to time.
Right, but you are not just presenting them with the prime Sydney real estate, residential market, or the mining companies and those sorts of joint ventures that they have been investing in. You're talking about, factories and bigger sorts of agricultural retail spaces, those sorts of things?
Yes, we had the opportunity to make a presentation of a select group of assets, and we put together a broad range of opportunities, which we had all translated, of course, into Chinese. We have a big rural business. We have some fabulous opportunities in the major cities, but in addition, right through our emerging markets in other parts of Australia, and of course New Zealand, Indonesia as well.
Sure. Brian, what is the growth in the market in China from richer Chinese companies or from wealthier individuals?
It's a mixture. Companies have clearly been enormously successful, but individuals within those organisations and companies have done extremely well. They've been wonderful entrepreneurs. They've created product that the world's buying. They've has shown imagination to establish infrastructure and businesses in different parts. A lot of that is clearly being now productive, and they're recycling these funds to actually witness and to hear firsthand key government ministers expressing support for Chinese companies and individuals to keep investing offshore was a pretty amazing experience.
Yeah, because we've also heard the stories over many months, really, about the worrying things about China's internal property market, that scores of apartment blocks have been built with no one buying them. But the Chinese government, as you say, is pushing foreign direct investment outside their countries. What do you think are the real opportunities? I mean, is it endless?
Well, I've now become a student for the whole Chinese momentum, and going there and listening to different speakers and different presenters, the depth of confidence of the Chinese business community is something none of us have really ever experienced. And there are parts of the real estate market in China that are absolutely red hot. I mean, there's some markets that you can only own one property in. You can't own more than one property. Families sometimes have the incentive to split so that maybe they can acquire two properties on a separated family. There are other cities that are being force-fed into growth, where they're building, the buildings are going in first, and then there's the encouragement then for people to follow. It's an environment that very few of us have ever experienced or ever fully understood. All I can say is that the rest of the world is absolutely sold on it becoming attractive to Chinese investment.
Yeah, so we have to be in there too. This outbound investment conference that you were fortunate enough to present at, I mean, it was obviously a kind of a great sales trade show with an opportunity to spruik your wares. But do you think your company or Australia will get a direct, concrete benefit out of that appearing at that conference?
Well, it's all, again, it's long-term thinking. I was quite encouraged by the response after my presentation. My presentation was more about my family making the decision to invest in China, in Beijing. It's our own office. It's a licensed office or so forth. And the comment came back, gee whiz, it's good to see a company that's prepared to come into our major city and be accountable for what happens. And one of the comments I made is that what we do in Australia with Chinese investors and Chinese purchasers, we're there to answer any questions they have and to provide advice and to be consistent. We're not there to make sales and then to disappear. We want to, sort of put some solidity and some credibility into our future.
Yeah, well, it's a great venture, and it's obviously, you're very excited by the prospects there, and no doubt you'll be followed by many other companies. Brian White, we will leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us.
Lovely. Good evening.